What things do Americans like and the rest of the world not so much? College sports, particularly football and basketball. The rest of the world loves soccer, but nobody gives a hoot about it at the university level. It's a different pipeline, isn't it? US college teams contain players that will go professional, don't they? Whereas if you're good enough to go pro at football, you'll already be playing pro at 18. Some college players go pro, but most of them won't. Watching future pros is a part of the fun, but mostly it's a matter of regional pride. Places like Nebraska and Iowa are far too small for any professional teams, but the entire state will live and die by their main college team. Many of their athletes are homegrown too, so if anything there's probably more pride and fervor around college teams because it feels more personal to the fans. When I was taking Japanese, my teacher always told us how Japan is crazy on high school sports. So maybe US isn't alone on that one. Root beer and ranch dressing. I brought some to Germany and had my friends try it, and they said the root beer tasted like medicine. They politely tasted the dressing with celery and said, interesting. But the look on their faces was that it was terrible, huh? Germans are great like that. My German friend met me in New York one evening. I bought us some bubble teas. He sipped his politely, then we stopped by his hotel for a moment, and his bubble tea disappeared. A few minutes later he said, I have to confess, I did not like the bubbles. I remember going to a German restaurant, run by actual Germans in the USA. We are very crowded tonight. You should probably go eat somewhere else. I thought that this was exceedingly polite. Wait, what else would you do? In the US it would usually be stated as, it's about an hour and a half wait, with a big fake smile. Root beer and ranch dressing, but not together. Pizza is the glue that brings these two together. MMDDYYYY date format. What's even more confusing is some regulated manufacturing industries in the US use DDMMYYYY, and I had a job with one for a while. If both nums are below 12, I'm lost. Now I just do November 24th, 2022 as my format so there's no confusion. YYYYMMDD is another good one, if only because no one in their right mind does YYYYDDMM. Also, it sorts. My sister is visiting the US from Europe and sent me a picture of a small Coke and asked, why is it so big? I could see Old Glory flapping in the wind, boys. This is a weird thing I noticed too. I don't go to fast food places much, but the last time I did I ordered a large drink and get this enormous cup. I asked what the small looked like, and that was literally the cup, which was considered a large back in the 1980s. I'm not sure when it changed, but it was a dramatic difference. You should see child's size. At 512 ounces it's roughly equivalent to the size of a 2-year-old child if they were liquefied, and is real bargain at only $1.59. Ice. Filled till the brim before you pour any drink. Cheerleaders. Cheerleading is also popular in Japan, albeit due to American influence. Same with marching bands. Japanese compete with massive American schools and do well. Bankruptcy laws. It's a major reason why America has historically had some of the highest rates of small business growth and entrepreneurship. America is one of the most forgiving countries when it comes to personal and corporate bankruptcy, student loans notwithstanding. Comparatively, European countries are much more pro-creditor, which severely hampers any sort of investment that's even somewhat risky. Sure, you can't say anything good about the US economy here. It's okay, I already translated that in my head too. America does socialism and care for failing corporations than it does people in need. A couple of genuine questions from a guy who is not very savvy in economics. Once a business has gone bankrupt, who exactly pays its creditors if the business owner does not have enough assets to cover debts? I mean, in any schema there is always a guy who is the last in line. Who that would be in this case? US government? The assets and any collateral is liquidated to pay the debt. If that is not enough, the creditor is out of luck. This is the reason the interest rate on small business loans tend to be high. The bank is assuming a lot of risk. Imperial units. I still quote the joke from Archer years ago where Lana mentions that only the US, Burma, and Liberia use the imperial units, and Archer says back, which is weird because you never think of the other two as having their shit together. This used to be much more prevalent in the US, but food coloring. When I moved from Japan to the US, I was surprised at how colorful their foods were. These days Americans are now more keen to organic natural stuff, so I see it less, but it took me a while to realize that blue raspberry is not a real thing. When we had just started dating, I took my Japanese wife to a new Italian restaurant near my place. She ordered pasta with a red wine sauce. What she got was a plate of spaghetti with pink cream sauce all over it. When we asked why it was pink, the waiter admitted they don't use wine. Just food coloring. Gross. It wasn't even vodka sauce? No. It was probably canned Alfredo sauce with red food coloring. This place didn't stay open long. 24-hour stores. I was in Chicago working with a colleague from Switzerland who suddenly realized around midnight that he needed a network cable to configure a mobile router for a job the next morning. I told him that I'd meet him in the hotel lobby to drive him out to Walmart. He was happily surprised, as he had forgotten about the US's famous chain of Walmart stores. It's interesting how after the pandemic the 24-hour model for convenience and hospitality industries has been diminishing and people are extremely inconvenienced by this. I deal with mostly tourists, and a great deal are bewildered by the fact that they can't get something like, say, a phone charger or toothpaste at 2 a.m. because the local Walgreens and CVS are simply closed at that hour now. And this is coming from a 24-hour kind of town. I'm a night person, I work nights, I live at night, I am the night, and COVID really fucked that up for me. Going shopping at 0900 is like going shopping at your bedtime. It powerful sucks. Flags. So many American flags everywhere. Also clothes made from flags. You think anybody wants a roundhouse kick to the face while I'm wearing these bad boys? Forget about it. Handicap accessibility. Old buildings towns in Europe are nice, if both your legs work. Largely due to the age of the buildings, I'd think, no? Yes, most buildings here are older than the US. Bumper stickers. Sometimes I get the impression people put their entire political philosophy in the space of a bumper sticker. Peanut butter and jelly. It doesn't help that outside the US, jelly often means gelatin dessert like Jell-O. Some folks who hear PB and jelly are therefore duly horrified. I eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches several times a week and have for many years. I guess it's a link to my youth and I won't give it up. Goddamn delis. At least out of all the places I've traveled to the US, by far has the best delis. I don't know if I can live somewhere without a great Jewish or Italian deli. Amen. Hey Europe, thanks for scaring your Jews away. North America has benefited immensely. Finally a good answer. Delis are amazing. Garbage disposals. Just shove that turkey carcass in the disposal and run some warm water behind it. When I was in the US, the house had a garbage disposal and of course it got clogged. Bunch of foreigners living together with no idea how to maintain one, and needed cleaning. Landlord wouldn't do any maintenance, and I had no tools and I've never cleaned one before. I realized I needed to stick my hand in it. And I have seen a lot of horror films. Do Americans realize that usually the first time people from other countries see garbage disposals in use is in horror films where someone gets their hand horrifically mangled? I turned it off at the switch. Then decided to just flip the power for the house off at the breaker. No way in hell I was sticking my hand in there otherwise. My heart was genuinely racing as I cleaned it out. I was terrified. Just so you know, they usually have a plug under the sink you can pull out. Sometimes it's just a normal outlet under there that's controlled by the switch. It was a long time ago, but I believed I turned off the power at the switch, pulled the plug from the outlet, and still turned off power to the house because my fear was not at all reasonable or based in reality. The horror films where they turn it off at the switch and paranormal forces make it turn on anyway. Front of mind during the whole process. Free public restrooms. I know they're gross, but they are nice to have. A lot of people don't remember it, and assume this is because of the Disability Act or something, but in the 1970s there was actually a grassroots political movement to ban paid toilets were becoming really common in the US. The group called itself aptly Sepsia, and they were probably one of the most successful grassroots movements ever in this country. It's an interesting thing to read up on if you're bored sometime. I remember reading on this. If I recall, They disbanded because they actually achieved their objective. Kinda crazy. Opinion signs outside their houses. Like, in this house we support. I find it weird and unusual. Many Americans, like me, also find those signs to be odd and off-putting. Americanized Chinese food. No one has us beat in that category. I'd like to say optimism, even if it's blind sometimes. The can-do attitude is extremely strong. I would also put belligerence up there for better or worse. That, get the fuck out of my face, I'm not paying for doing that, attitude. Whether you actually can or not, the American culture makes you feel like you can really do anything. Again, it's a double-edged sword, but you'll seldom find an American who's just going to lay down and take someone's shit or heed someone who says, to your aspirations, you can't. I resonate so much with this comment, as an American that has lived in Europe for over a decade. My idiotic optimism, once derided, was in fact my superpower as I maneuver through the world. It now takes enormous energy to try, and the expectation is that it will not work out, I will fail, whereas before I had relentless energy, and such a thought would never have entered my mind. I'm actively working on this. I'm looking forward to going back to being a hapless sunshine puppy. Driving everywhere. Anywhere you go in a car. But I suspect for many, other options are so rare they don't think about them even if they do exist. According to Brazilians at the Rio Olympics, they can tell who's American because we had beach towels, drank a whole bunch, and kept our areas trash-free. What do Americans love but others don't? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.